So yeah, I thought I'd just talk to you guys a little bit about how to become a homesteader, or some steps that you need to do before you become a homesteader. I guess the first thing, which is probably number one, is do some research on homesteading. Now, you can go to YouTube and find lots of homesteading channels, and you can also find some really good homesteading channels, and then you can also find some really over-the-top homesteading channels where people are buying new trucks, building new houses, putting in brand new solar systems, doing all this stuff. Don't pay attention to those people. Those people are, I'm not sure, like they're still good homesteaders. I'm not saying they're not, but they're not realistic. Unless you have lots of money, then all the power to you. But if you're just trying to do some research and you're trying to figure out how to get this going and blah, blah, whatever, then yeah, find some good channels, ones where people are realistic and they don't show you all the fluff and not some of the bad things that go on homesteading. So yeah, so like spend a bit of time researching before you would even decide to become a homesteader. That's number one. That's very important. And like I said, don't pay attention to all these people who, I don't know, that say that you need to have, you know, tons and tons of money to be a homesteader. Now, you do have to have some money to be a homesteader because in the beginning it's very expensive. But in the long run, you actually save money by being a homesteader. I've been doing this for a long time, so. Let's see. Once you decide to become a homesteader and once you did all your research and you spent a lot of time, now what I would suggest you do, even if you live in an apartment or an house in town, it doesn't matter, wherever, is maybe try planting a garden. Like people will go, oh yeah, but I live in an apartment. It doesn't matter. Go buy a few 5-gallon buckets or some big planting pots and plant a few vegetables. And yes, you will have to buy grow lights because you're not going to get enough light inside of a house. So you just buy some grow lights. They're not expensive. You can get them for less than $50. I mean, yeah. So the reason I always tell people to do that is because it gives you a feeling of how difficult it actually is to grow a garden. But now, growing inside is not going to show you all the problems that you will have when you start growing gardens. Like when you're growing inside, you're really not going to have much in the lines of pests or anything like that. But it still gives you a good starting point. Because I think a lot of times when people decide to become homesteaders and they move to the country, get their land, and then they get in over their heads. And, you know, sometimes it just doesn't work out for them and they give it up. Well, they give it up before they even begin. Homesteading isn't a marathon. You don't try and do everything all at once. You take your time. You pick your battles. Certain things are more important than other things. So, like I can't tell you what the most important thing is. That's something you would have to decide for yourself. For me, when I bought my place, I had to put 2 additions on the house because the house was way too small for us. It's still pretty small, but it's big enough. It's just the 2 of us now. Our kids are all grown up and got families of their own. So yeah, that's a couple of things. Decide where you want to live or start your homestead. Like if you're deciding to move to, you know, a different country, different state, different province, whatever. I think one of the best things to do is when you're deciding to do something like that, you definitely need to check restrictions on the land that you're looking at and make sure you are allowed to do homesteading. Like, you know, animal husbandry, make sure you're allowed to use the water, you're allowed to drill a well. All of these things are very important for homesteading. So yeah, those things you need to do. Like never buy land without doing your research on the land first. Just like don't become a homesteader unless you do some research. So yeah, and one of the biggest things that a lot of people, when they become homesteaders, they fail, is because they don't understand how stressful it can be in the beginning. It's just like anything that you do. You know, in the beginning, it's always going to be a little bit more difficult. The longer you're a homesteader, the more things you figure out, the more things you figure out to make things easier for you. So yeah, that's another very important thing. You need to understand just how stressful it is. So yeah, that's something that's very important. And this one probably should have been number one, I think. I just thought about it just then, which I should have said first. Make sure your spouse or your partner or your significant other is on board with you. Because the last thing you want to do is have the person that you are with not wanting to homestead and agree to do it because they know that you want to do it. While in the long run, that doesn't work very well. So make sure both of you are on the same page and have the same goals. It's very important. The other thing most people want to do, I know I do it every year, I've been doing it for years, and that's animal husbandry. Now, the number one thing with animal husbandry is you got to remember livestock are not pets. Now, I'm not telling you don't take care of your animals and treat them like pets, but they're not pets. Like, let me give you an example. Like, if you want to be a homesteader, the very first animal you're going to get is chickens. I'll tell you that right now. Start with chickens. They're the easiest, simplest, the smallest cost would be chickens. And the thing is if you have a rooster, then you're going to get hens that could actually potentially hatch out chicks for you. And that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you hatch out chicks, sometimes you're going to get roosters. So this is one of the hard things that you have to do on a homestead. Now, a lot of times you might be able to sell the extra roosters. Most of the time, no. So this is the one thing that I tell everybody when they want to become a homesteader. You have to understand there's times when you have to put an animal down, even if you don't want to. Because if you know anything about hens or roosters, hopefully you do because you did some research, that roosters can be pretty brutal on hens. So yeah, you don't want... Me right now, I think I have 4 roosters, but I have a lot of hens, and my hens are all free range, so that's why I have so many roosters. Now, the other thing that you can do if you have roosters, instead of just wasting the meat, is some years if I have a lot of hens that are broody and I'm getting a lot of chicks and I end up with like 20 or 30 roosters, what I will usually do is I put them in another pen and keep them for about, 6 months. I'll keep them for the entire summer season, and once, November rolls around, I'm here in Canada, so, it's pretty cold by then, I will process them. Because I kept them for 6 months, the old laying in, or the laying ends from roosters, or the roosters, they can be pretty tough. So they're not much good food for people, but they're great food for dogs. Yep, so that's what I do with a lot of my roosters, is I'll keep them for 6 months, especially if I have a lot. If I have 1 or 2, it's not worth the trouble. But if I have a lot of roosters, that's what I will do every year, is I will raise them, for, like I said, for about 6 or 7 months, in the summer, in the spring, and I will process them for meat for my dogs. So yeah, that's just so that it's a hard thing, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to go, oh no, well I could never do that. Well, you're not going to make it as a homesteader. I'll be blunt. You just won't, because that's a reality of homesteading. You're not living in a city anymore, and I guarantee you, the people that you buy your food from, they have no qualms about doing that. So those are just a few of the things, right? Now, the other thing that most people, when they first think about homesteading, they don't think about, it's a very physical and mentally challenging way of life. like the mentally challenging part to me has always been like the financial part. The other thing is you know, the very first time that you have to put an animal down is very, 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 very stressful. I mean, I don't enjoy doing it, but I know I chose this way of life. That's why I do it myself. And I always said that to myself, that if I ever became a homesteader, well, I knew I was going to be a homesteader. I mean, I always knew that. I grew up that way, but I moved away to get work. So I knew I would be just coming back and doing what I do right now. But I still do not like putting my animals down. Now, you can send them out and have them processed, but to me, a part of homesteading is being self-sufficient as possible, not relying on somebody else to do something for you that you can do yourself. That's my definition of a homestead. But now my definition and your definition can be two different things. Homesteading do not mean the same for everybody. And I agree with that. Whatever's homesteading for you is homesteading for you, and good for you. So yeah, that's just a few of my opinions for how to begin a homestead, or what you need to know about homesteading. Now, the physical part of homesteading. If you're a person that lives in a city or lives in a town, doesn't have to be a city, I guess, or lives anywhere, and you don't do much physical work, or you know, you're working in an office and you don't really go to a gym, or you don't work out, well, the one thing that you need to understand, even if you can afford to buy tractors and have all that type of stuff, you still a very physical job. So if you're deciding to go and buy a homestead or buy a piece of land and do all your own work and get everything done, then you're definitely going to need to be in somewhat good physical condition. Now, you don't have to be a marathon runner. I'm not saying that. But you still need to be in somewhat decent shape. You can't be, you know, totally out of shape. If you can't walk a mile without getting totally winded, then yeah, you won't survive as a homesteader. So yeah, I'm not telling you not to become a homesteader. I'm telling you, you need to exercise and pay attention to your health. It's important. When you're healthy, your homestead's healthy. Last thing you want to do is start a homestead and then a month later get sick. So, and like for me, I talked about, you know, the first one that I talked about is deciding to become a homesteader. I mean, I don't fluff or tell you it's a great way of, well, it is a great way of life. It is probably one of the best lives that you can have, but not in the beginning. In the beginning, it's always stressful. Especially if you weren't a country boy all your life and you're not used to any of this stuff, then it can be very stressful. I was fortunate. I grew up in the country, so I knew what I was getting into when I did it. Now, for the young people that don't really have a lot of money out there, when I say like buy a piece of land and all of this stuff, I understand that sometimes banks will not give you a mortgage on land. They won't. They just won't sometimes. But sometimes they will. But what I always suggest you do when you're looking for land is talk to the owner of the land who's selling it and see if they would take on the mortgage for you. Like give you the land and you pay them directly. That is usually the best way to do it when it comes to land that's not developed or there's no home on it. Banks don't usually like to lend money for that. Yeah, and you don't need tractors, you don't need all this stuff when you start a homestead. The biggest thing that you need is to be physically fit and do things slowly. Now, I'm not saying don't get a tractor, because you know, tractors do help. But you don't have to have one. You don't. When you first become a homesteader, or when you're first starting out, and you're trying to become a homesteader, the worst thing you can do is take on too much, because that will cause you to fail. Because the stress would be overwhelming, the physical part would be overwhelming, and you know, because when you're stressed, your significant other stressed, and you know, things can always go sideways. So just don't take on too much. Take your time. The first couple of years is more a learning curve than actually homesteading. You can do all the research in the world. You still have no real idea what it's like to be a homesteader until you actually do it. And that's just, you know, the way it is. That's just life. But now, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from being a homesteader. I just want you to realize what's involved in being homesteading. Like if you want to free range your animals on your homestead, after a couple of years, then you probably should look into LGD dogs, livestock guardian dogs. They're probably one of the most important animals I have on my homestead. They protect all my other animals because I can't protect them 24/7. These guys can. I have 3 of them, 3 Great Pyrenees. Logan, Storm, and Misha. Misha is one of Storm and Logan's puppies. We're not breeding anymore, so we decided to keep one for ourselves. So yeah, I hope you got something out of the video. Homesteading is a great way of life. It's challenging at times, even for me, and I've been doing it for years and years and years now. But, you know, there's days, I'm going to be totally honest with you, there's days that I look at myself and I shake my head and I go, why am I doing this? But then 5 minutes later, I'm like, yeah, I know why I'm doing this. Because it's the only thing that I would ever be happy doing. So, that's why I do it. So yeah, I hope you got something out of the video. I mean, I know it's a lot to take in at once. But, you know, like I said, do research. If you go follow some of my YouTube videos, they'll show you a lot of things. And I don't fluff. My videos are not fluff. My videos are true. Like, you'll watch some of these videos and they're putting up, you know, $50,000 greenhouse. You don't have to do that. You don't really need a $50,000 greenhouse. But I mean, it's nice to have them, but you don't need it. Not to start out with anyway. Down the road, maybe if you can afford it, go for it. But I wouldn't do that at the beginning, because even after you do all your research and you decide that's exactly what you want to do, I think I've said this before in this rant of mine, is that you really don't know anything about homesteading until you actually start to do it. Because doing research and physically doing it is 2 different things. That looks like, oh, not quite. A couple more, but a couple more heads on this one. 3 more. Yeah, there's a lot of garlic here. I'm only on my 2nd tie off yet. And I've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 more to do. So yeah, this is going to take me a bit of time. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. And I hope you got something out of it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll answer your questions to the best of my ability. And thanks for watching.